Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Pro Football Talk. I'm your host, Sean Robert Grant, and I want to take a moment to really just thank you for being here and thank you to everybody who listened in last time as we were podcasting about the NFL being rigged. And so I said this last time, I'm going to say it again here. Basically, we sort of, actually, let me say this first. If you're not willing or ready to hear this truth that, we've been talking about and go to some of the comments, especially on YouTube. It's picked up some serious commentary about all the evidence provided to let you know that the NFL is manipulating outcomes. And, just in case you're curious to know how far the rabbit hole goes, the last video that I did on my YouTube channel, which is just Sean Grant, you can see a lot of evidence of, everything that has transpired in that regard. And so, with that being said, I'm just going to say this right now, and then I'm going to get on to our topics of the day for this episode. If you're not ready to hear this, I get it. If you're not ready to really take in the truth of what's going on, not only in the NFL, but in sports today, it's okay. Turn this podcast off. You don't need to listen to it. I'm not pushing anything down your throat, but I guarantee you, if you're willing to listen and you're willing to watch these games without being emotionally invested, it's like a relationship. A lot of times when you're in a bad relationship and you're emotionally invested, you can't see a damn thing that is coming up as a red flag in front of your face. So if you're not ready to take that leap, take care. Maybe we'll see you sometime in the future. But if you are, let's dive into this. And the reason why, I want to give you the main objective why I'm doing this, and it's because I was an NFL fan from the time I was like a little kid till like recently, until I discovered, wait a minute, something's not right here. And the reason why it's not right is because if you're going to manipulate the outcome, at least come forward and let everybody know you're manipulating the outcome. That way, people aren't as invested emotionally so much, and they're able to watch the game free of desiring to have their team win at all costs, when in actuality, it's just not going to be the case. They've already figured it out through statistics, through other variables of who's going to win, but not only who's going to win a certain game, who's going to win the Super Bowl. They've already figured it out, right? And I once again, I liken it to WWE because it's the same thing. They already know who's going to win the heavyweight, championship, the WWE, champion or whatever it is. They already know. And the same goes with the NFL. So with that being said, let's get into this weekend's games. And there's just a couple things that stand out to me that really just kind of reinforce what I believed to be true. And so the first game I want to start off with is the 49ers versus the Vikings, right? So let's take a look at that game. Let's take a look at what unfolded with that and how obvious, it becomes when you see a team play so terrible, right? You see a team play so terrible right after they've done, just played probably their best game of the year in the wild card round, right? And so a lot of people come at me and they say, well, it's week to week, it's football. But yeah, I get that. But at the same time, these are professionals. This is what these guys do all day long, every day for majority of the year, right? You just don't lose all of a sudden how to be good from week to week. There's manipulation there, right? There's manipulation there. So in that game, one of the things that stood out to me was how absolutely terrible Kirk Cousins played, right? How absolutely terrible Kirk Cousins played and how Delvin Cook was just non-existent, basically the entire game. Non-existent, right? And people may say, well, the 49ers are a better team. Well, I tell you, Minnesota came out so flat and laid down, it made you wonder, like, are they even here to play? You know, are they even here to play? And then by the time they did start coming back, this game wasn't even close. It was already determined even out of the gate that Minnesota was not going to win. The biggest storyline, and one of you guys on the last thread kind of, really helped me to peek game to this, and I looked into it. So the NFL really does a great job of following storylines, right? And so the storyline last week was, can Kirk Cousins win the big game, right? Can he win the big game? Or can he win a primetime matchup? Because he played so badly in the entire year when it came to Sunday night or Monday night football games. I mean, he played terrible, right? And this is a guy who's making 30-something million a year to play like he's a seventh-round rookie who's taking no snaps, right? So to watch him basically come out against the 49ers and just lay down. Just lay down. I watched one of the plays, and so there wasn't really many bang-bang issues in here that were very obvious. But, I mean, the interception to Richard Sherman, that's another thing. When an interception is that blatantly open, that, like, you throw it right to the opposite guy, and he has to do nothing else but stand there and wait for the ball to come to him to get the pick. That looks suspect, right? Because once again, these guys are practicing this all the time, and unless they have a concussion, like I can tell you from a football standpoint of playing football, when you run the same damn play for 60 times throughout the week, it's embedded in your subconscious, which is basically what's really doing all the work unless you try to consciously override it, right? So when a guy messes up a route in a play that he's ran probably 100 times that week, I don't know about 100, but, once again, it's suspect. There's question marks, right? So that just kind of like, I watched a little bit of that game and then I saw where it was going. And I'm just like, you know what? This is absolute trash. I'm done with it because Minnesota just didn't show up. If you really want to understand what the truth of the matter was, Minnesota just didn't show up. And that's all to it. They had some mistakes, but they counted themselves out even before they came out of the tunnel. So it just wasn't even a thing, But the other two games I really want to focus on, or the other three games that happened, were the Texans, Kansas City game, right? So it's funny. The NFL has a wonderful way of making us believe that something is not going to go according to the storyline that they want, but then they manipulate it right back to the place of where it does fall into that storyline. So the Texans go up 24-0. 24-0. And once again, I'm sitting here and I'm watching this. So you mean to tell me Patrick Mahomes is probably like the best quarterback in the universe, or one of the best quarterbacks in the universe. And I've seen the Chiefs score at will. You tell me they come out and all of a sudden their offense is lost. The biggest game of a lot of these guys' careers, their offense is just non-existent. So you tell me that's the case, right? And Houston comes out, lights out. Deshaun Watson is having a game of his life, right? Defense playing amazing, shutting the Chiefs down. It's 24-0. How in the world does a professional football team lose a 24-point lead? Well, I'll tell you how. They stopped playing, right? They stopped playing. Deshaun Watson had the defense figured out, or so we think. But he was playing lights out. Then all of a sudden, Mahomes just turns it on, and the Texans defense checks out, right? The offense all of a sudden wakes up for the Chiefs, and Mahomes is just, I mean, he scored, was it 5 touchdowns in a matter of a few minutes, and it's just almost like, what is this, street ball? Like, how is it? It took Andy Reid this long to figure out. Like, there's just so many variables, and it's funny because I can't point to any one thing, but the idea that they're down 24-0, and then they come back up 28-24, and they score like 51 points, which is also interesting because the final of the Green Bay-Seattle game added up to 51 points. NFL likes to use numbers. It's kind of like that whole, if you look at some of the stuff I posted, it says hashtag hidden in plain sight. They like to do stuff like that because that lets you know that they're telling you what they're doing, but not everybody can see it because a lot of people would rather live and die by lies, and as opposed to realizing the truth of the matter. But in all honesty, when something that drastic happens, it made me think again of that New England-Atlanta Super Bowl. You have to pay attention to what happens to the other team. They lay down, they stop playing, they check out. There's no emotion. And you even hear the commentator say, guys, it looks like the momentum has shifted, and these guys have no emotion. So, they lost all their energy over the last commercial break. They forgot how to play football after the last, official timeout. Like, what happened? No, the only thing that happens is the NFL execs call up, okay, time to make the switch. And the Texans lay down, forget how to play football, and the Chiefs all of a sudden just basically start playing flag football, and they score 5 touchdowns in a matter of minimal minutes. And it just becomes this thing. It's like, oh my gosh, really? Are you serious? Because, see, people started to catch on. People started to catch on when everybody started to believe, okay, State Farm is a huge sponsor. And in all of the State Farm commercials during the NFL games, there's Patrick Mahomes and there's Aaron Rodgers. So people started to kind of catch on, not because of that. I noticed that a while back. But State Farm, basically 67% of their advertising comes from sports. And a lot of their advertising comes from the NFL because guess what? They just bought the Cardinal Stadium in Phoenix. So they have their name on that. And then they're doing a lot of different stuff with the NFL. So just kind of pay attention to the small things that you can open your eyes to really find out the truth of the matter. But anyway, people begin to catch on, and even people in my circle starting to think like, okay, wait a minute, there's something about this that's not really right. There's something about this that's not really right? So anyhow, you take all those variables into place, and they say, you know what, we have to kind of throw people off their toes a bit. And how do we do that? We let the Texans go up 24-0. We let the Texans go up 24-0, and then from there, we'll let the Chiefs come back like they had an adverse, set of circumstances to overcome, and they still did it anyway, right? And honestly, to be truthful and honest with you, I feel like the Super Bowl will be Green Bay and Kansas City, and trust. If this changes, it means that the NFL knows that people have caught on to what they're doing, so they got to change their plans up a bit. They do this in wrestling all the time. They'll rewrite the script 30 minutes to an hour beforehand, and it will go a different way than everybody expected. See, they're always a couple steps ahead because they know that people are always speculating, especially when the officials are involved, right? So moving on from the Chiefs game to the Ravens game, and this is probably the one thing in this podcast that was on the top of my mind, and this was Lamar Jackson, right? Lamar Jackson scorched everybody this entire year. Like, it was almost unfair if you watch this guy during the regular season. against all these teams and how good Baltimore was. And you mean to tell me Tennessee? I mean, I get it. Derrick Henry was a Heisman Trophy winner. I watched Ryan Tannehill for 7 years struggle as a Miami Dolphin. I'm not taking anything away from him. But for Lamar Jackson to blow up the league the entire year and then come into a playoff game and lose to Ryan Tannehill and lose terribly, like to be down 28-6 or something like that, come on. Like, you're telling me all of a sudden Lamar takes everything he's done so well over the years and then forgets it. And this is the kicker, right? This is the kicker. It's kind of the same thing with the whole Drew Brees fumble in the wild card game last year. The guy turns the ball over 5 times. He only turned the ball over 8 times in 16 games, 15 games in 2019. He touched the ball hundreds of times. If it was carrying, passing, handing off, he had 8 turnovers total. He turns the ball over 5 times in this game. And then people say, well, his receivers didn't really help him. He had a lot of drops, yada, yada, yada. Bullshit. That's bullshit. These receivers don't catch the ball all season long. Like if you make it to the NFL as a receiver, catching the ball becomes second nature. You don't even have to consciously catch it. You unconsciously catch it. Your hands begin to work in a certain way. It's just science, right? It's science. It's not anything other than that. So you have to purposely step in to your process of being as a wide receiver to drop a pass. And I look at some of the passes they were dropping. I look at the interception Lamar had. Literally, he throws the ball directly to this guy, right? He throws the ball directly to this guy. There's another one just like, come on, man. Are we serious? Are we really going to stand here and believe that this man played this good all year, is likely going to win the MVP, and then he basically comes out and does nothing? It reminds me, once again, going to baseball, the Dodgers. The Dodgers making it to like the World Series in the playoffs games, and their best players, Cody Bellinger, murdering the ball all season long. Like, and then he couldn't even hit a beach ball. He couldn't hit a beach ball in the playoffs. And you mean to tell me like all of a sudden everything changes and people say the pressure? I'm here to tell you, it's still football. It's still baseball. There is no pressure, right? All things aside, you're still playing. These guys are professionals. If they were kids, then I'd understand. But they're professionals. This is what they do. They spend year-round working to be the best at what they're doing. So to see them fall apart in a capacity of this magnitude, it has to raise suspicion. And I've had people fighting me, talking about, you know what, man, it was just prime time under the lights. He couldn't show up. I'm like, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. This man has been playing football his entire life. The last 4 or 5 years, from Louisville to Baltimore, he's been playing in front of like crowds that average between 70 to 100,000 people a year. He went into some of the most hostile environments in college and just played lights out. So you mean to tell me, and I look back to his playoff game last year, you mean to tell me he all of a sudden against a Titans team that struggled to make the playoffs, right? It wasn't like the Titans were blowing everybody out and playing lights out football the entire season. They barely made it into the playoffs, right? You look at some of the teams they lost to and it makes you scratch your head. I just don't get it. But now I do get it because it's all rigged. It's all rigged. So to tell me that Lamar Jackson just had a bad day, you know what? I'm going to let you believe your own lies and believe that to be true. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to walk away from it because I already know what the truth is. And the truth is that Lamar Jackson did not just have a bad day. Like, there's a storyline to this. And so the last thing I want to get into was the Green Bay game, and I gotta applaud the NFL because they made it interesting, which I knew that they were going to do because they know Seattle is known as a tough team. I knew they were going to make it interesting, but I knew in my heart that Green Bay was going to win. And you look at the game, and it just kind of felt that way the entire time. Not once did I ever feel like Seattle was going to get a victory. One, they're in Lambeau Field, and two, it just felt like Green Bay was already favored. And then what happens? Jimmy Graham catches a pass, and he's tackled. Now, this is a close bang-bang play. He's tackled near the first down marker, but instead of them bringing out the chains or anything like that, they just give him the first down to end the game. Once again, the officials strike again, helping the NFL to rig the games that they need in order to keep their storyline intact, right? If he doesn't get this first down, Seattle gets the ball back and has a chance to go down and score, but guess what? That's not what they want, right? They want Green Bay in the title game against the Niners, right? And trust me, you might be listening to this as a Niners fan. I do not think the 49ers were going to win. If the 49ers win, trust, the NFL has something up their sleeves because they know that we are on to the idea that they're going to do a rematch of the very first Super Bowl of the Packers and Chiefs. See, wrestling does this all the time. They want you to believe a certain thing, and then they throw what they call a wrench into it to kind of throw you off to make sure that you're not on their coattails, right? But the officials strike again, right? The officials blatantly see a call, don't take any measures to try and make sure that it's legitimate, and they just say, oh, let's call it anyway because this is the outcome we want. Case in point, rigged. Now I'm interested to watch basketball games and see, how basketball and baseball, I already know what baseball, but all these professional sports, it's interesting to see how a team plays, and then when it counts, to see how they actually show up, right? But I know as far as the NFL goes, man, it's like Space Jam. They're stealing guys' brains and they're running out there as vegetables. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a fan observing without emotion, but seeing some things that raises questions. With that being said, we'll see you for championship week next week. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care. We'll talk soon.